Good evening. So we will continue now in Yaakov, and again tonight's shir is sponsored in memory of Chana Devora Bas Avram. And if you'd like to sponsor a shir, please feel free to contact me. And the Gemara had been discussing about the importance of laughter, of schok, based on resolving certain psukim in Koheles and in Ecclesiastes, which seem to offer contradictory concepts of when laughter is or isn't appropriate. And the last thing the Gemara had said was that both in order to receive the Shekhinah, the presence of God, or in order to properly learn Torah, so being in a mood of laughter is an appropriate frame of mind. We discussed a little bit because it brings you to a state of perfection. Someone who's laughing shows that he's happy, and the presence of God or the Torah in its perfection wants to associate with those who are in a frame of mind that is most ideal. But then the Gemara questions this: Ini? Is this so? V'amar Rav Gidl Amar Rav Gidl said in the name of Rav, Kol Talmid Chacham sheyoshev lifnei Rabbo. Any Torah scholar who sits before his teacher, ve'ein sifsosav notfos mar, and his lips are not dripping with bitterness, meaning fear and awe of his teacher, tichvena, he should be burnt. Shenemar, because the pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Sifsosav Shoshanim, his lips are roses, Notfos mor over, so literally means they're dripping with myrrh, a type of incense. But the Gemara plays a little bit of a pun on the pasuk. Al tikri mor over, don't say that there's myrrh passing his lips, elamar over, rather it's bitterness. And al tikri shoshanim, don't read it as roses, either shoshonim, but rather his lips are learning and it should be dripping with bitterness. So you just finished telling me that being in a state of laughter and happiness is the appropriate frame of mind in order to approach the study of Torah. And yet we see over here elsewhere that Chazal seem to say that one has to be in a state of fear and awe when one studies Torah. So the Gemara offers a number of different resolutions for this. The first answer is lo kasha, it's not a question. Ha birabba, ha bitalmida. The teacher, his frame of mind should be one of joy, because the teacher is sort of modeling that perfect understanding of the Torah that's being taught. And in order to model that, he has to be in, as we were just describing, that perfect frame of mind, that one of joy and laughter. But the student, in order for you to be able to receive as a student to learn, you have to realize that you're lacking something. Because if you don't feel like you're lacking anything, you will never succeed in learning anything. So the student, by definition, is in a state where something is lacking. That's the opposite of that state of total joy of perfection. So whereas, again, the teacher is in a state of great joy and perfection, the student has to be in a state of lacking. V'iboyis ema, alternatively, you can explain why there's no contradiction by saying ha v'ha birabba. Both the Gemara's earlier statement that laughter is necessary for Torah study and the Gemara's statement that laughter is detrimental and that one has to be in a state of awe and fear, they're both talking about birabba, the frame of mind in which the teacher should be finding his or herself when approaching teaching. However, ha mikami deliftach, when before the teacher actually begins to teach, then the teacher can be and should be in a state of great joy and happiness. Hal lebasar de liftach, but the other one is after he begins or she begins to open their mouth, that's when they should be in that state of awe and fear. And the Maharal explains, because first of all, when you have that opportunity to be a teacher of Torah, to be a transmitter of Torah, and you're ready, so to speak, to receive the Torah from on high and to transmit it to other people, that should put the person in the greatest state of joy whatsoever. But that's all in the preparation. But when you're actually teaching the Torah, you have to understand the awesome responsibility that you have and the power of the material that you're teaching. And when you put yourself in that state, then that's a state that's going to put a person in a state of a bit of awe. Kihad de Rabbah, like we find by the Amora of the Talmudic sage Rabbah, Mikame de Pasuk Luhu L'Rabbanan, before he began to teach his students, Amar Milsa de B'dichusa, he would say something that would bring a smile to their faces. Ubadchi Rabbanan, and the students would kind of laugh a little bit, and Rashi says it would open their minds in order to be in the frame of mind to learn Torah from him. But L'sof, subsequently, Yosef be'emsa, he sat in a state of awe, upasach b'shmaitza, and he began to discuss the halachic matters that he wanted to discuss. Now, one thing the Pnei Yeshua points out, and we'll see this in the Gemara later on, where the Gemara actually gives us an example of what does it mean to begin with a milsa de b'dichusa, is he says it doesn't mean that the teacher is meant to be a stand-up comic prior to beginning to teach. Because we know the Gemara also tells us that the Shekhinah, the presence of God, does not rest in a state of frivolity, in a state of lightheadedness. So rather, he says, this milsa de b'dichusa, this matter that brings a smile to people's faces, either means something of agada. In other words, before you get into the halachic Gemara, begin with something of agada, or he says, start with some real sharp insight that's going to get people to say, wow, and maybe smile because they think it's so interesting, the point that you bring out, and then afterwards go to the main thing. Be it as it may, many people know that when you're speaking in public, it's important to begin your presentation with something that's going to catch everybody's interest and have them turn to you and listen to what you say. And that once you catch them in the first moment, then afterwards they'll be open to hearing what we have to say subsequently, even if it isn't quite as interesting and fascinating as what it is that you began with. Okay, the Gemara goes on now. Va'af Sefer Mishlei Bikshu Ligdos. Also, the book of Mishlei, of Proverbs, Chazal contemplated hiding it. Why? For the same reason as the issues with Koheles, Shahayu Devarav Sosrin Ze'ezeh, because on face value it appeared as if the words of Mishlei were contradicting themselves. Umipnei ma lo ganzu, so then why didn't they actually end up hiding the book of Mishlei? Amri, they said, well, save for Koheles, when it came to our concerns about the book of Koheles, Lav Eininan, didn't we investigate? Va'ashkachinon taima, and we found a reason, we found a way to resolve what appeared to be contradictions. Hachanami, so over here also when it comes to the book of Mishlei, li'ainin. Let's take a look into it and see how to resolve what's bothering us. Umay devar sosur zeh. So the Gemara asks, what were the apparent contradictions that were found in the book of Mishlei that Chazal felt they had to resolve them? So Ksiv, one pasuk says, this is in the 26th Perek, the 26th chapter of Mishlei, Al ta'an ksil ki ivalto. Do not respond to a fool according to his foolishness. Viksiv, and another pasuk says, Ane ksil ki ivalto. Respond to a fool according to his foolishness. So which one is it? Are you meant to respond to a fool when he comes to you with foolishness? Or are you meant to ignore him? And the Gemara says, Lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Habedivrei Torah, habemili da alma. One is when someone asks you a foolish question in Torah, you should respond to him. Because you don't want the person to walk away and say, you see, I asked a question about the Torah, and nobody could answer me. But the other one is if someone's asking you questions, and we'll see some examples later on in the famous stories with Hillel being disturbed on Friday afternoon, that a person asks you general things, there's no need to answer a fool according to his foolishness. Kiha Dahuda Asal Kame de Rebbe, like the story of a person who came before Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi. Amalei, he said to him, Ishtecha ishti, your wife is my wife. Ubanecha banai, and your sons are my sons. This person was claiming that an affair with Rebbe's wife and that Rebbe's children were illegitimate. So Rebbe didn't respond to his foolishness. Rather, Amarle, he said to him, Ritzoncha shetishte kos shel yayin. Rebbe said to him, do you want to drink a cup of wine? Shasa, the person took a cup of wine, drank it, upaka, and he dropped dead. It does not appear that Rebbe poisoned him, but somehow the cup of wine was the vehicle through which this man got his comeuppance for the disrespectful way in which he spoke to Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi. We said that according to Rashi, when it comes to words of Torah, you should answer a fool according to his foolishness. When it comes to other things, you shouldn't. The Meiri seems to say the other way around. That the Meiri says that a person should always be careful to ask his questions in a wise manner. But he shouldn't be embarrassed if his question reveals his ignorance, because it's only through questioning that you're going to come to understanding. And a teacher should always be careful to answer a question, even if it's a question of stupidity and foolishness. He should respond to it in a calm and collected manner, because the pasuk says, don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, meaning the fool went ahead and asked the question in a foolish way, and the pasuk doesn't mean don't respond to him, but it means don't respond to him in a manner which is similar to how he posed the question. He asked stupidly, you should answer the question intelligently. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good evening.